Last thing we want to talk about in bar graphs is their advantages and disadvantages. Okay. So much like the circle graph, they're eye-catching and easy to understand. That was an advantage of the circle graph too, especially when you had the percentages labeled. Okay, here you've got the bars, looks appealing, pretty easy to pick up the information on it. Okay. How it's better than a circle graph is it shows the number of items for each bar, not just the percentages. Which is what a circle graph does. Hello. I got a class. Give me a second. Okay. Although we did find that with the circle graph, when we did it using Excel, you could list both the number and the percentage as well. But the bar graph makes it a little bit easier to see the numbers more than a circle graph does. Okay. And finally, and even though we didn't do this, it's easy to compare two sets of data. That was actually a double bar graph, even though we didn't look at those. So like if we wanted a bar graph and we wanted to split each bar into males and females, or if we wanted to split each bar into age groups or something like that, we could still do it on one bar graph. It would be a double bar graph or a triple bar graph. Circle graphs, every time you have a new set of data, you got to make a new circle graph. So it's, I guess you could compare them, but then you'd have a whole bunch of circle graphs that you have to look at. Okay. Disadvantage, like with circle graphs, can only use discrete data. Okay. Meaning that if we wanted to look at measurements of something like the weight or the height or the distance or things like that, or bar graphs wouldn't work. But we'll find that histograms can take care of that, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Okay? Even though the bars give you an idea of the number of items in each one, we can only estimate in many of them the values of each, or the value of each bar. And now that depends on the bar graph. Some are pretty easy to read, like the one that we did, let's see, where's the one that we did? On the indigenous languages, that would be kind of hard to read because some of the numbers were like 47,190. So you could estimate it on your bar graph that it's around 47,000, but you're not going to be able to get the 190 by estimating. And finally, other thing with bar graphs, if the range of numbers is large, some bars could be hard to estimate. So depending on your data, because you could have, oh, you could have something like this, where it's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's say it's going up by 2000s. So we got 2000, 4000, 6000, 8000. And what if one of your bars is something like 8,000, but the other one is like less than 1,000? That's really hard to estimate. But because we have to start from zero, we have to make sure that this bar is included, which makes this one really small and hard to estimate. So that's a possible disadvantage of bar graphs. Okay? So circle graphs and bar graphs are for discrete data. Now we're going to talk about continuous data, which is a lot of what we graph and a lot of what we analyze in statistics. And there's a couple of graphs we use for that, specifically histograms and line graphs.